Here's a diagram showing how the stress response can be thrown out of whack by a traumatic event, starting at the left of our diagram. So folks can get their um, stuck on kind of affect. So in the red box, we've got symptoms of anxiety, panic, hyperactivity, exaggerated startle, inability to relax, restlessness, hypervigilance, digestive problems, emotional flooding, chronic pain, sleeplessness, and hostility or rage. But the same person can have this kind of stuck off kind of physiological stress response and affect where they have a flat affect, they look depressed, lethargy, deadness, exhaustion, chronic fatigue, disorientation, disconnection, dissociation, complex syndromes, pain, low blood pressure, poor digestion. And folks can be in the stuck on and stuck off kind of phases of this diagram on different days. So dysregulation is kind of the theme here. And in this diagram, we've got the PET scan of a healthy brain, a typical child development um, on the left. And on the right, we've got the brain scan of a Romanian orphan who was institutionalized shortly after birth and shows the effects of extreme deprivation from starting in infancy. So the temporal lobes at the top on the right side of the brain on the right, um, regulates emotions and receive input from the senses and that's where you've got black on the diagram. So not a lot going on, nearly nothing in terms of brain activity in that region of the brain. In this ACEs study, we found high correlation to other health hazards. Um, so for someone who's experienced a lot of ACEs, you have like double the risk of smoking, 7 times the risk of alcoholism, 10 times the risk of street drug injection, and 12 times the risk of suicidality. And these go to long-term health indicators as well. So higher risk of cancer, higher risk of heart disease, shorter lifespan, and even the prediction of a loss of 20 years on the lifespan for someone who's experienced 6 or more adverse childhood experiences from those 10 categories a couple slides ago. So trauma and violence is ubiquitous and far reaching. 60% of American children were exposed to violence, crime, or abuse in their homes, schools, and communities. 4 out of 10 American children have been exposed to more than one form of violence. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. So violence is everywhere. Our children can be exposed anywhere at any time. This diagram shows the cycle of not just trauma, but violence. And the dotted line circle in the middle starts toward the top on the right with the violence or harm. And then there's a physiological response, the fight, flight, freeze, shock, injury, pain, denial, and then kind of the emotional aftermath with loss, panic, and anger. Hiding feelings, here's that conspiracy of silence taking effect. Acting strong or helpless, confusion, what does this mean? Desire for justice or revenge. And often, when our institutions can't provide justice, if they're family institutions, schools, justice system, professional institutions, giving a sense of justice, we do vigilante justice. We improvise. So we create an us versus them story, and that's where our cycle continues. So the full line that's kind of spiral shaped, that's breaking out, the first step is expressing thoughts and feelings. We're breaking that conspiracy of silence. And that's where I want to like put highlighter on and say talking circle. That's the perfect intervention for someone who's experienced violence. Accepting what happened, naming and confronting fears, asking why them, um, willingness to take risk, and with support, going for some accountability, approaching them, understanding their story, um, choosing to forgive. I feel that's optional. It's not a necessary step, so long as responsibility taking happens on the part of folks who've caused harm. Making things right, so an interpersonal experience of justice, and discovering our story. So that's only then is the possibility of reconciliation available. What I'd like to point out here is in the dotted line circle, we have the us versus them story, and in the spiral breaking out is discovering our story. And I both the inner cycle and the breaking out cycle are fueled by narrative and the story we tell. So that makes me think if we have give students opportunities to tell their story in a environment where they're grounded in values and with some adult support and guidance, we can help inform and shape how students tell their story, and break that cycle from the inner circle to the spiral. Both are fueled by narrative. So, talking circles establish shared values like trust, honesty, respect as part of the framework, and it engenders a safe space for sharing difficult and painful disclosures. That addresses that sense of meaninglessness. Opening and closing ceremonies create boundaries in which we can interact differently and remove our acts and masks that create distance from our core selves and the core selves of others. That addresses that sense of meaninglessness and creates a space where we can share meaningfully. So, deconstructing that conspiracy of silence. Circles are dialogue structures strong enough to hold anger, frustration, joy, pain, truth, conflict, diverse worldviews, intense feelings, silence, paradox. That's a direct quote from the Kay Pranis reading little book of circle processes, and that addresses and undermines the conspiracy of silence. Storytelling facilitates meaning making and relationship building grounded in shared values in talking circles. That addresses that sense of isolation, powerlessness through narrative formation. So making things right when there's a harm. What I'd really like to highlight from this slide is that rallying around the victim is almost always an option. You can do circles of support for someone who's been harassed about their body, someone who's experienced dating violence. Rallying around the victim is usually an option. Sometimes confrontation of the offender and holding them accountable. Hopefully, something can be done, and there are different options and avenues for that, punitive and restorative. But almost all the time, we can rally around the victim. And I don't want that to get lost because if someone's going through something difficult, one of the best things is feeling heard and seen and experiencing empathy from people that care. The condition of truth is that it allows suffering to speak. Dr. Cornel West. So I feel any relationship, if it's a personal one or if it's a professional one, can be measured by its capacity for truth telling. And in circles, the truth telling is only relevant so much as it allows suffering to speak, says Cornell. So we have the 6 R's of regulation on the left, and then again on the right, we've got circle practice where I'm highlighting how circle addresses each of these R's, which helps someone when they're dysregulated. Think of that graph where there's stuck on hypervigilance states and the stuck off kind of depressive flat affect states. These 6 R's help get regulated again with our physiology stress response. So we've got rhythmic, which is resonance with neural patterns and pathways. So our talking piece creates kind of a rhythm to it. Or if you want to get next level, we've added group drumming to some talking circles where we're not relying solely on our words, but we're still coming together in a good way. The West African word for the drum, djembe, comes from a phrase that is literally coming together for peace. Rewarding or pleasurable. Circles are my favorite part of school, said one of the first graders I was just saying hello to. They volunteered that. They are relational, they're safe, they promote communication with other. Um, in Circle, we share and listen to practice empathy. That's an explicit part of the structure. Circles are relevant. One third grade teacher used the check in, how was your night last night? So our day-to-day lives, it's relevant, it's the here and now. Circles are respectful. Sometimes respect is explicitly written on the list of values and they're hung on the wall or part of the centerpiece. Um, so that's really woven into the fabric of Circle is respect. And repetitive, we could do circles could be daily or weekly check-ins or a repeating discussion prompt like today is a good day because, or today is a bad day because, or what's new and good with you, and we kind of make sure we keep tabs on our students on the day-to-day of their lives and the ups and downs of their lives. And I always refer to Circle as circle practice, as we do with restorative justice practices or restorative practices. And I think of practice as preparation because these are only useful when the crisis comes, because you don't want to begin practicing when you're in the heat of a crisis. Um, so it's good to have these going on so that when something happens, we're ready for it. So here is the same piece from Hamilton. There are moments that the words don't reach. There is a grace too powerful to name. And I say that because when we get Circle going as part of our routine, some wonderful things can happen there. I saw a most unlikely outreach from one freshman to another of respect and connection and empathy. Um, from a student who's got a reputation for being a little bit off the wall and somewhat mean and aggressive to others, to reaching out to a student who's kind of the outcast of his freshman class. And this student took tremendous social risk to show empathy for his peer. He said, you know what? I feel for him because he lost his grandma and I miss my grandma too. And this was one of the more unlikely uh, things I've seen in Circle. But because we're coming together out of respect and empathy and practicing those values, um, it created an opportunity for that to happen. Here is an excerpt from an email I got from a teacher who took the same class all of you are enrolled in about a year ago or a year and a half ago. And I was checking in on her for some late assignments, and she wrote back, I've not completed the assignment yet. On Tuesday, while at work, I got word that a very good friend of mine had died. My students noticed my sadness and suggested we sit in a circle and talk about it. It was the most amazing moment of my career. These boys, this is 7th grade special education, sat close and led it themselves as a group effort. They just went around and talked about death, their personal experiences, and kind words to lift my spirit. It was picture perfect. I'm spending all my time with my friend and their baby right now. I have the wake and funeral this weekend, but as soon as I get a free moment, I will get all the work done. Thank you for understanding. So here, the circle practice was part of the routine. And when the students saw that the teacher was having a tough moment, circle is what the 7th graders reached for from their toolbox. Some links for you to check out other powerful ways people are leaning into Circle to address crisis, crime, and conflict. Also, check out the link here, link below for some of the restorative justice hubs happening around the city where folks are doing incredible work on the daily. And there are 7 of these restorative justice hubs around Chicago. So that link is to a map of different things going on in the city.